rocks.
Well, welcome to the Intentional IT Professional. After Simon's finished, if you could just scan in your QR code on the back of your badge and give us feedback on the presentation. So here's a little bit about Simon. Simon Herring is a cybersecurity expert, speaker, and leadership coach with over 25 years of experience helping companies find weaknesses, strengthen defenses, and respond to incidents. Not content to be just another tech nerd, in 2009, Simon began exploring how our thinking and ultimately our behaviors impact cybersecurity risk, productivity, and effectiveness. The result, networks and systems aren't only the assets with harmful defaults and easily exploited vulnerabilities. Humans have them too. Cybersecurity isn't just a tech problem, it's also a people problem. Simon loves tracking down hackers and keeping them off the network, but what really gets him fired up is helping people succeed. As a leadership coach, Simon helps clients conquer challenging obstacles by thinking differently about things, influence, change, and conflict. Today, Simon will show you how to communicate more effectively by managing the social dynamics to help other or hinder how we interact with each other. So welcome, fellow metalhead, Simon Herring.
All right, so a warning for everybody. Everybody gets to participate in this talk today. So everybody's going to say something. How scary is that? Got everybody's attention. All right, I'm going to change the way you think about communicate, connect, and collaborate by using 5 words. Scarf. I have a scarf. Crouch, good. Scarf. Velcro. On Velcro. Teflon. I'm going to teach you how to use WTF the right way. You're already using it wrong. And icebergs. Icebergs. So, let me suggest something to you guys. Here, you hold that. You get to wear this. Here we go. And since we're talking about the brain, someone grab a brain. Whoa! Yeah. So first of all, what's a guy like me, a kind of a tech nerd guy doing, talking about this kind of communication, squishy sort of stuff? Well, first and foremost, I fractured my skull when I was 9, and then I had 2 more concussions, one in another accident, and then playing rugby. But from age 9 to 22, I actually struggled really, really hard with OCD. So, except I call it CDO, you alphabetize it the way it's supposed to be. So I have what's known as an OC brain. So if you have OCD, you always have OC-type tendencies, but those tendencies were actually what I would consider a superpower. So having an OC brain actually helped me to get a job at the NSA. Having a brain that can take things and put them on a track and repeat them and think about them and learn them actually helped me to learn 3 languages fluently. Anybody know what Farsi is?
Already?
Yeah, spoken in Iran. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but learning how to conquer that limitation required me to know a lot more about my brain, because it meant learning was a little bit harder for me. Now, as I became a cybersecurity guy, I realized that some of the things that I do on people's networks really freaks them out. It scares them, especially if you're the person that's responsible for securing the network and I break in. We're usually not friends by the time I'm done, and I don't like that because I think I'm a friendly guy. So I needed to learn a new way of communicating and a new way of connecting with people so that I can help influence them in a positive way. So here's what I want to suggest to you today. And you're going to learn it through these 5 keywords. Okay? First and foremost, humans are social creatures. We are governed by a social organ right between our ears. Work is a social system, and communications are a social experience. Now, those experiences can be good or they can be bad. They can be awful. Now here's something that's very neuroscience that you might be super interested in. It's kind of a neuroscience topic here. Social pain, a really bad conversation. Somebody saying something unkind about you, somebody humiliating you in a meeting. Social pain is felt with the same and sometimes greater intensity than physical pain. And that's not a psychology statement, that is a neuroscience statement. So if you were to put somebody in a functional MRI and look at their brain when they experience social pain, the part of the brain that registers physical pain lights up. That means, for all of you networking nerds out here, the core part of the network that's experiencing trouble is lighting up, and that's the same spot of your brain that handles the physical pain, like when you burn yourself. So something I'm going to talk about today is how, if there's a way to do it, and I'm going to tell you that there is, how can we have the best possible communications with people? If we knew that there was the potential for your brain or for your connection to people to completely disconnect. You're in the middle of a conversation, and all of a sudden, you just disconnect. If you knew that there was a way to prevent that in yourself so you could maintain focus, and you could also control that in others so they stay focused as well, is that something that you guys would want to learn about? How's that sound? You guys ever been in the middle of a conversation and you're so focused and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, something happens and it distracts you and you're trying to, you're like, man, where was I? Where was I? For all of us IT folks and quasi-IT folks, that might sound a little bit like a network disconnect. If you understand the TCP stack, if you understand how networking works, that's a TCP reset. And that connection has to be rebuilt. The same thing is happening in your brain. I'm going to talk to you about that today. By going the right way. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to two important parts in your brain. I've got a goodie box here. This is a really scary looking brain. Anybody feel this way sometimes? Yeah, who wants this? I was going to say you can't have it, but... Okay, the PFC is the prefrontal cortex in your brain. It sits right here. It's the smallest part, one of the smallest parts of your brain by volume, but it actually uses the most fuel in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for holding your attention on things that matter. It's also responsible for planning, right? Coming up with ideas, creativity, collaboration, things that we all value when we're trying to communicate. The PFC is small and very, very fussy, and it runs out of fuel super, super fast. So if you've ever spent time with someone who might annoy you eventually, maybe it's a toddler, maybe it's a super needy friend, the beginning of that time together it goes smooth, but after a while they wear you down and suddenly you just find yourself without any more patience. That's because your PFC has run out of fuel. It doesn't have a whole lot of fuel. It's about a thimble size worth of fuel, and it's simply glucose, right? When your PFC runs out of fuel, you act dumb. A couple things that make your PFC run down faster is divided attention or trying to focus on too many things at one time, right? We think we can multitask. Folks, can we multitask? No. So don't try it. It actually takes more time to get something done when you multitask. So just focus on one thing at a time and help your PFC out. When your prefrontal cortex runs out of fuel, you are going to start making bad decisions. In fact, studies have shown, a University of London study showed that your IQ drops from that of a Harvard MBA to an 8-year-old when you try to multitask. Now, I think what I do for ODOT is pretty important. I do not want to make the decisions of an 8-year-old. Does anyone else want to make decisions of an 8-year-old? No. Okay, so let's ditch the multitasking. The limbic system is the second part of your brain. It's actually a collection of systems. Your amygdala, which is your O crap or oh no center in your brain, it's your fear center. That's the one that says, hey, that's a lion and you should run. That's your fear center. Your limbic system is also responsible for processing things that are coming at you. It's the part of your brain that says, what is this? Why should I pay attention to it? Should I pay attention to it? The limbic system is the emotional center. And when the emotional center gets fired up, it steals resources from your prefrontal cortex. I just explained to you what happens when your prefrontal cortex runs out of resources. You lose the ability to focus, and you start to make poor decisions. So I want you guys to all do this. So hold up the thumb. This is where everybody gets to participate, all right? Put your thing here. That's the thing. This is called a fist. Yeah, the doo-chong. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Rudy. All right, so this is going to act as a fulcrum, all right? So here's what you need to know. When the prefrontal cortex is warm, you have access to what you need to make great decisions. Your prefrontal cortex can get hijacked by your limbic system. When that happens, it does this, okay? Your limbic system is now warm. It's robbing resources from your prefrontal cortex. We need the prefrontal cortex to be warmed up. All right, when your prefrontal cortex is warm, you are engaged. Hopefully I am engaging every one of you in a conversation and you guys are interested. I have your attention, which means your PFC is warm. You will learn more when your PFC is warm. If I suddenly scared the crap out of all of you guys, or said something really offensive, it would take time for you to process what it is I'm telling you, because you're not going to be hearing things and your limbic system's going to be hot. 2 terms to remember, all right? Prefrontal cortex, when it's warm, you are in a toward state. Everybody say toward state. Toward state. Okay. When your limbic system is warm, you are in an away state. Everybody say away state. Away state. Here's a great way to remember this. All right? You run away from pain. So say, I run away from pain. I run away from pain. See my commitment? I told you everybody would participate. All right? It's not going to get any scarier than that, okay? But I run toward reward. So say, I run toward reward. I run toward reward. Okay, so we've just talked about the away state and the toward state. So we're talking about you right now. Your disposition being in a away state or toward state. There are things that people can say to you. There are things that people can do to you that will put you in a toward state. That's called a reward, all right? A toward reward. Likewise, there's things that they can say that will put you in an away state. Today, I'm going to teach you what those things are so that you can manage them in yourself and you can manage them in others. And if you do that, you will be able to communicate, connect, and collaborate much better with people. Right? So that is the gist of this conversation. Are we all on board? So I run toward reward and away from pain. That's right. So I run toward donuts and away from spiders. Super simple. Simple diagram here. Can I have my scarf? This is where we're going to talk about the scarf. We're going to talk about scarf rewards, and we're going to talk about scarf threats. Okay? A scarf reward, and so scarf is status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And these are 5 areas that describe the type of reward or the type of threat that we impose upon ourselves and that we also impose upon others, or others can give us the reward or they can give us the threat. SCARF describes the areas where we can be triggered. Now, I want to pause for a second and I want to unpack the word triggered for a second. Over the years, the word triggered has gotten some very bad publicity. People are easily triggered. Millennials are easily triggered. Oh my gosh, give me a safe space. My apologies to any of the millennials. The word triggered is an appropriate use because it's something that happens like this, and that's what you guys need to remember. It happens so fast. So I don't want you to get distracted by the whole millennials getting easily triggered and needing a safe space. This talk is not about advocating safe spaces. What I am talking about is how to make communication safer so we can be more effective, so that we can stop making mistakes and creating one of the things I can't stand. It's called rework. Rework. There's two ways to do something: the right way and over again. Please quote me on that. When we are in an away state and trying to solve a problem, we do not have full access to our decision-making capabilities. We need to be mindful of that, and we need to find a way to get ourselves back into the toward state so we don't make mistakes. Mistakes lead to rework. I'm going to teach you guys brain hacks today, says the cyber hacker guy. Okay, brain hacks. So SCARF: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. You can be scarfed and you can scarf others. Keep that in mind. So first and foremost, we talked about when your limbic system hijacks your PFC, you lose the ability to make decisions and do problem solving and collaborate. Here's what's really interesting about the away state. The away state is very, very powerful. It's very strong, and it lasts longer. That's what this red arrow means here. Oh my gosh, the light is bright. Move away from the light. It's strong, and that's where the Velcro comes into play. You will that. Okay, threats, dangers, harm, negativity, okay? Negative things stick to your brain like Velcro. If I asked you guys, we don't have the time to do it, but if I asked you guys to give me a list of all the horrible things that happened to you, you could come up with it like this, okay? If I asked you to create a list of all the wonderful things that had happened to you, you could come up with it, but you really have to think about it. As humans, we have a default negativity bias, and that's just something that we have to work with. It's part of our programming. It's kind of part of our operating system, if you will. You need to know the code, you've got to know the operating system in order to work it the right way. But what a great illustration. Velcro, negativity sticks to your brain, it lasts longer. So what about the Teflon? What do we know about Teflon? It doesn't stick. Positive things do not stick to your brain. All right? Think about this. Ever wake up in the morning, it's a beautiful day? Of course, today was a beautiful day. It was a little hot. Have a great cup of coffee, maybe have a chat with a wife or one of your teenagers or whatever. You're like, yeah, this is a great day. Pull on to 70, some sucker cuts you off. Holy cow, it's the end of the world. Suddenly your day sucks. Can you believe it? Wow, boom, that's Velcro. And how long does it take you to remember, if you remember, that you had a positive interaction with your family in the morning? It doesn't, because to the brain, positivity is like Teflon, it just slips right off your brain. Now, part of me thinks, and the research suggests, that that's just part of our survival instinct. We have default levels of cynicism that are designed to keep us alive. Now, me as a security guy, I'm pretty cynical. If you tell me that everything's patched, I'm probably going to say, no, it isn't. And that's just because I'm a security guy. But the brain is wired that way. Okay, so I'm just going to keep ripping this off and putting this on like this and going like that. Negativity is like Velcro to the brain. Hold on to that. Don't hit anyone with it. And Teflon, or positive comments are like Teflon. Have you guys ever heard that it takes 10 positive comments to overwrite a negative comment? You guys heard that before? It's true. The numbers, depending on the personality, depending on how positive the words are, what the reward is, might be a little higher or lower, but that backs up that claim that negativity is like Velcro and positivity is like Teflon. So, let me see if I missed anything here. All right, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. SCARF. What I want to do now, and this is where participation is going to be important. I want to unpack the letters of SCARF, starting with status, and I want to talk about what status means to your brain in social situations. And then I want to invite, one or two of you just to share in as positive and non-personal way as possible some of the ways that you have experienced a status threat at work. I don't want to know people's names. I don't want to hear that Tyler made me mad when he put me down in a meeting yesterday. Okay, that's off limits. Talk in general ways so all of us can understand that SCARF is real. Status threats are real. Status rewards are real. So status is basically your brain keeps track of, by default, how you rank in a group. So if you're in a collection of people, your brain is saying, do I know more than this person or do I know less than this person? Am I better than this person or less than this person? Your brain is doing that on default, right? If you're going to a meeting where somebody's going to present something to you and they are an expert, but maybe you think they're an expert too, you might feel a little bit of status compromise. You're like, man, is this person going to know more than me? Am I going to feel dumb if they ask me a question? That's your brain experiencing a little bit of a status threat. It's also a little bit of uncertainty, which is the next one that we'll talk about. But status is important. Now I'm going to kind of seed the idea here with a status threat by saying, have you ever been in a meeting and come up with an idea and kind of raise your hand and say, hey, I know, and you put your idea out there and someone goes, that's dumb. Anybody been in a meeting where that happens more or less? Okay. How did that feel to you? Did you get a knot in your stomach? Did you get angry? That is your brain reacting to a status threat, right? What's another example of a potential status threat? Anybody, please. We don't move on until someone throws out an idea. Class participation is required. Tom, you look like you're thinking hard. Mr. Curry.
I was at a meeting, I called up a meeting, I was the organizer. There was only 2 other people in the meeting. It was fairly important in order for the project to move forward. I was there on time, in the room. The other 2 people didn't show up. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get really defensive, really angry. And then it was a little bit after that I realized I was in the wrong room. But I got that knot in my stomach and I got kind of pissed off.
So, whole lot of status threat there. First and foremost, you might have felt a little disrespected by people not showing up. That's a little bit of a status thing. That also goes into relatedness, which is we're going to talk about that 4 letters down. But yeah, you must have felt a little bit like a knucklehead. And so your brain goes, wow, we're not very smart today. And so that can linger for a while because those threats stick to your brain like Velcro, and you got to kind of rip that off. Yes, ma'am. One more.
Lack of eye contact or attention to it.
Yeah.
The person making the suggestion, if there's no eye contact or attention, it's like you weren't even speaking.
Absolutely. That's a great one, and I might actually have that on the next slide.
You're probably talking to a millennial.
I just found this little cool thing, and I don't feel very smart because I keep walking back to the keyboard and tapping it, but it looks like this thing might work, or maybe it doesn't. Come on now. All right, I'm not going to hit that power button. I'm just going to keep doing this. There we go. Let's say they're better than others. Did you guys notice the lady that was doing this? Nobody ever really does that, unless you're doing it to Wally. Wally and I are friends. It's all good. But nobody really does that. But the point is yeah, sometimes things make you feel like a loser, and that lingers for a while. We need to be careful about how we impact people's status in our meetings, in our communications, and things along those lines. So, practice disposition over position. Are there any managers or supervisors in the room here? Raise them high. Okay. Your position grants you the authority to do many things, fair things, to your employees. You can communicate certain ways, you can demand certain things. But it's your disposition, the way you handle yourself and the way you say things that will inspire them to do things for you, right? A person walking by themselves or a person with no followers, right, is not a leader, okay? A person with people with them is a leader. He has followers, and people are more likely to follow you and be inspired based on your disposition toward them. Now I'm going to call myself out here. I was a chief technology officer at a cybersecurity company. It was a pretty successful company. I was arrogant, very, very full of myself, very convinced that I was always right. And I took that disposition to the people who worked around me, and we struggled to make significant progress. Now we made the progress, but it wasn't until I learned a little bit more about my disposition and how I came into the room and almost within 5 minutes starved everybody. And And I'll unpack a little bit more about that as we step through those letters. Gratitude goes a very, very long way. Simply thanking somebody for a job well done can boost their status, as well as a couple other areas in the realm. A status boost can come when you fist bump somebody. Last night I was out at the track doing some work, doing a workout. There was a guy running the bleachers who had a lot of work ahead of him. He was working hard. Didn't know him from Adam, but as I walked past him, we made eye contact, and I simply put my hand up and I fist bumped him. He was a stranger to me. Didn't know who he was. But that affirmation that he was doing a great job was a status bump to him, and he smiled. So don't forget to do that to people. Reward people along the way, because you know full and well, without being intentional about it, they're probably not getting a whole lot of rewards. They're not getting the mental boost that they need to stay focused on good things. And that just goes back to find ways to appreciate each other. How's that sound so far, guys? Is this resonating? Is it making sense? Awesome. Certainty. The ability to predict outcomes. This guy looks confused. I am a cybersecurity professional. I like to break into networks, and I like to make sure that networks are secure. But one thing I know is that my adversary is a whole lot better at what he does. Not necessarily than me, but than the organization, because they usually have unlimited resources and unlimited time. I do not have unlimited resources and unlimited time. So there's always a sense of uncertainty to me about whether or not we've got everything accounted for. And that can be a distraction to me sometimes. But our brains are prediction engines. We like to know what's going to happen. That's why people will spend $5,000 a year to get a subscription to how to make $1 million in options trading, or how to trade futures. They'll spend a lot of money to make sure they can get the stock market absolutely right. People spend a lot of money to be able to find the answers, and I think that's okay. But deep down inside, it's because we want certainty, and there are things that we do in our communications that create uncertainty, and sometimes that uncertainty we feel just shows up at the absolute wrong time. So if I'm working on an incident, if we have a potential malware incident, and link pops up, or Skype, if it pops up and someone says, "Can I talk to you?" Well, I'm trying to focus on something, but link is blinking at me. It's making that noise, and then they say, "Are you there?" And I'm trying to do something, but I'm a nice guy and I want to help out. So now my attention is divided, but my brain can't let go of the fact that somebody wants my attention. And that's creating some uncertainty for me. I wonder what it is, I wonder what it is. Our brains want to close open loops. It's really important. So, give me some examples of how uncertainty, or the absence of certainty, shows up in your world. Let's put it in the context of in a meeting, an email, or maybe that person who suddenly shows up at your cube unannounced. How might that trigger some uncertainty? No looking around the room and staring at people. No call-outs, I might have seen that.
If you're in the middle of something that's big and somebody shows up at your cube and you're like, what are they going to ask for? Is it, and then, something that could be big, something that could be little, but if it's something that's pretty big and you're like, okay, why isn't it ticket? There's all these questions you start having about what the person's going to ask you about and stuff like that, and that can sidetrack you for sure.
Yeah. What does that do to your focus, Craig?
Kills it.
It kills it, right? And usually you're doing something pretty important, aren't you?
Sometimes.
Come on now.
Yeah.
I sit next to this guy. He's usually doing something super important, something super big. All of us are usually doing something important and super big, which leads to just a minor pet peeve, and don't anybody take this too personally, but my favorite question, which I wish we wouldn't ask each other, is, are you busy? Okay? I'm gonna actually, let me just jump to the slides. I'm gonna talk about that real quick. Are you busy is one of those things where I'm not a sarcastic guy. I mean, I have a sense of humor, and I think I like to use sarcasm in a humorous way. But am I busy is one of those things sometimes where I might knee-jerk, and in my brain I say about 7 different things, and then I say something really polite, which if you ever ask me, am I busy? And I pause for 10 seconds, it's because I'm thinking through all the answers. And then I will ask this question, which is, I'd love to help you right now. Is there a time when I can come and see you and help you out? Has anyone ever heard me say that before? Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to unpack why I do that. It's very these guys are laughing because we work together a lot, and they Skype me a lot too.
I'm the guy asking if you're busy.
Yes. No. Just having fun. Just having fun. So here's what I want to underscore here with this slide here. When you come to somebody and ask them a very vague question, when you've been thinking about it for a very, very long time, you are in what my wife would refer to as the 11th chapter phase. Let me explain that. I like to read, and I read a lot of books. And around the 11th chapter, I'll have an aha moment. And I'll go to my wife, and I'll try to explain to her 11 chapters worth of book in 30 seconds. And I expect a reaction. I expect her to have an aha moment. And she doesn't. And it's frustrating. So she calls it the 11th chapter syndrome. That's not too different if you've been trying to troubleshoot something, you've been trying to figure something out, and you show up at somebody's desk, and you go, boom, and that person just looks at you. They are not in the same chapter that you're in, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to catch up with you. Now, they're not being a jerk when they don't answer, and they're not being a jerk when they ask questions. They're trying to catch up on the chapters. And if you don't give them clarity, they're going to write their own chapters. Do you see where the rework begins? That's where rework starts to happen. We start to jump to conclusions about why you arrived at my cube with this conclusion you just made. So we need to be a little bit more patient. When someone comes to your cube, be patient. I'm working on it. But be prepared when you go to somebody's cube. Think about your why. Now this is part of being intentional. What's the opposite of intentional first? Unintentional? Did someone say accidental? We'll just say someone said accidental because that's the right answer. The opposite of intentional is accidental. I want all of us here, I want us to be like the champions at ODOT of intentional communication, not accidental emails and linked things and conversations going all over the place. Let's be intentional about it. And one of the ways we would be super intentional about our communications is to start with why. Everything begins with why. That is such a simple statement, but think about it. And we're not going to get philosophical here, but if you feel the urge, I'm going to sit back down in my little chair here. If something comes across your desk and you suddenly don't know how to handle it, and you go, I'm going to go ask Greg. And you get up, pause, and go, why do I need to ask Greg? Because this is a network problem. It's always the network, isn't it, Greg?
Always.
It's always the network. If Mr. Blake were in the room, it's always the servers, okay? Is it really the network? Think about it for a second. Maybe it's not the network. Maybe it's something else. But if you immediately go with that knee-jerk, something, and if you remember that something may have put you in an away state. Something may have hijacked your brain, this email, this emergency, this alert, and just by default, because when we're in a away state, we go to habit. It's one of the things in the brain. When you get scared, you go to habit, because the brain is lazy, and the brain likes to hard code everything and pull these tasks up, so we just do it by memory. That's triggered when you're in an away state. So pause and ask why. Why do I need to go talk to Greg? It's not a, when do I need to go talk to Greg? I'll just log into the router myself and go to the network. No, I don't want you to do that. But ask why. Get your PFC engaged. Here's one of the pivotal things here. Asking why cools off your limbic system. This is a brain hack. Asking why cools off your limbic system and warms your PFC back up. Now, you may not readily have the answer to why ready yet. That's because those two systems generally disconnect when you're stressed out. So the connection needs to be fired back up, and your PFC, kind of like a system rebooting, needs 5 to 10 seconds to get re-engaged. But why gets the correct part of your brain involved again? You may come to the conclusion that you do need to go talk to Greg. But what you go and talk to Greg about will probably have a little bit more clarity. You may not go to Greg and say, Greg, is the internet down? That's another favorite too. Is the internet down? You go to Greg and say, Greg, I just tried to access the myohio.gov website, and I got a denied message. Do you have any idea what that may be? Boom! That's clarity for a guy like Greg who's busy. It's not a matter, is the internet down? Because Greg will go and search a dozen other things. That's not the problem. You pause and think, why? Why do I need to go talk to Greg? Because I can't get access to this website, and that's those proxy thingies, and it looks like I can get to this other place, so it's probably not the internet. Maybe it's that proxy filter thingy, that iron pony thing that they use. Wally calls it the iron pony. It's the iron port. So, why makes you pause? Here's another thing, and this is why I ask people if I can come and talk to them in 10 minutes or maybe even a half hour. When you ask somebody if they can wait and you do it respectfully, something magical usually happens. Do you guys know what that is? They figure it out themselves. Now again, that's not you being a jerk. That's you teaching people how to be empowered and equipped. If you want to have more focus time, if you want to have great communications and connect and do all sorts of super awesome stuff for ODOT, help people solve problems on their own. If you want to be constantly distracted, then continue to answer your email as soon as it shows up. Don't hesitate, don't delay, reply immediately. Better yet, click reply all. It's another thing. Answer your link, your Skype messages on the double. And make sure that you stay in Skype and have a very technical conversation over 30 minutes that you might actually be able to have in a 5-minute phone conversation, by all means. So a little bit of sarcasm there. I'm going to unpack some of those things as well. But you all are laughing because you know what I'm talking about. Those things are like a death in 1,000 cuts for IT professionals. They ebb away at your focus, and we want to maximize our focus. Remove the jargon. Does everybody know what TLAs are? Tell me what a TLA is ASAP. ASAP, what's a TLA?
3-letter acronym.
Who said that? Say it louder, Mike.
3-letter acronym.
TLA is a 3-letter acronym, and other than the military, IT pros are awesome at 3-letter acronyms and jargon. If you want to influence people with your communication, get rid of the jargon. You're in IT already. You don't need to prove that you're in IT. That's the interesting thing. First 10 years of my security career, I felt like every piece of communication I sent out needed to have the hallmark of a nerd on it. And I did a really good job of writing very nerdy material. It was very long, and nobody ever read it. Which is why people, when I came back to do another penetration test, or I came to break in a year later, the holes were still there. They couldn't make it through my jargon-laden documentation. So I decided it was time to simplify things. Do it in your email, do it in whatever communication modality you use, simplify that message and get the jargon out of it. And this is particularly important with the business. And it also applies to the business communicating with IT. I took accounting courses in college. I took some marketing courses, but I guarantee you all that jargon has left the building. So business units, take some of the jargon out of your communication as well, so we don't have to make assumptions about what you mean. Quantify your ask. I have had several times, and I touched on this a little earlier, I've had several times where someone has come up to my cube and said, Hey, you know that email I just sent you? All right, you laugh. Why is that funny?
You haven't looked at your email yet.
Because there's an assumption right there.
There's an assumption that I've actually read the email.
Right, that
You know that-
not only did you get it, but you read it right away because it was for me. So you read it right away, and you should be responding to me right away.
Absolutely.
And then you start feeling like, oh, you
Yep.
know, I was.
Nathan just pointed out, that's a status threat right there, too. So, I get it, I understand why people write emails and then follow up with the email. I would prefer, some of you are laughing, but people do that. I just sent you an email. I can guarantee you I didn't just read your email. I love every one of you in here, I'm not calling anybody out, okay? But there's an assumption, as you stated, that someone has read that email, and you most certainly have not read the email. I'm not bird dogging my email. Some people need to bird dog your email. I'm going to call it Robbie on this one. He needs to be in his email, that's part of his job. Robin, you are in email, that's part of your job. But some of us have planned block time where we are not in our email because there's things, very strategic, very heavy thinking things that we want to do. And we can't have our email bugging us. We can't be like Pavlov's dog. Ding, email, ding, email, ding, email. Or ding, link, 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 link. Be careful when I say that. Something else came out of my mouth. So someone shows up at your queue, and they haven't, back to the scenario with Greg, they haven't thought through what it is they want to ask. I'm going to tell you a quick story, because I love stories, about a client that I was with. So this is not ODOT. It's not an ODOT person. This is someone at another organization. But we were working on a sim together. And for those of you who don't know what a sim is, be sure to come to Nathan and Tyler's Simplify Your Day presentation, which will be tomorrow. And they're going to kill it. You'll learn more about a sim. But this is a sim project. And the guy that I was working with realized there was a particular bit of data from one system that he wanted to get into the sim. Notice how I didn't use any jargon? How cool was that? So somebody wanted to get data here into a database here. So he goes, I got to go over and talk to Ron. So he gets up and he walks and talks to Ron, and he goes, oh, Ron, so we've got the sim and there's connectors, and so there's data, and so we want to see what the data looks like in the sim, and is that something we can do? And Ron had his back turned when we showed up, so he's like this, all right? Got headphones on, and we just show up, taps him on the shoulder, he takes his headphones off, you know he's in the zone. Ron is in the zone, okay? Beautiful 5 monitors, jamming. And that question gets asked. Did anyone actually hear a question in that tirade? Did anyone really know what my friend was asking for? I mean, I explained it to you, but that is not the words that came out of his mouth. And it was awkward. So Ron, who's emerging from some form of emo jam, right? His eyes are glazed over, and he literally goes like this. What? Well, my buddy, John, gets offended. So we've got scarf triggers on both sides, okay? Ron is in an away state. Got to keep track of my names. John is in an away state, and now we're just not communicating at all, and he goes downhill from there. It's a waste of everybody's time. I simply asked, Ron, can you send the data from your application to the sim? And he goes, nope. And I know that might sound a little funny, but it wasn't possible. We got our answer, and we connected. So when I say quantify your ask, start with the why and think about what is it that I'm going to go over and interrupt somebody's emo jam over, and perhaps maybe waste a little bit of time and experience all these TCP resets, and suddenly we're connecting and we're communicating. I mean, if I wasn't there, this question would have never gotten answered. Would have never gotten answered. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about certainty rewards. Does anybody remember what the A is? Status, certainty, autonomy. Autonomy, sense of control. Ever have a day where you feel like that? Does that resonate with people? If it doesn't, I want to know what you do. I actually like having a little bit of pressure. And I'll tell you why. There's a very, very smart neuroscientist named Amy Arnsten who came up with this thing called, that's scientific, came up with this model called the inverted U. And what the inverted U describes, and I should have an image of this, but it's basically, it's a U like this, X and Y axis. And basically the middle of the U, the peak, the middle here, that is your optimal focus point. And what it is it's basically the amount of tension or stress you feel and the amount of, or the level of performance is what that maps out as. If you don't have enough stretch, or the right amount of stress, known as eustress, good stress, and even the right amount of interest, you're going to be bored. No one should be bored at ODOT. Based on what Charles is sharing with us, and I believe it, no one should be bored at ODOT. So while this may be a little too much, having some stretch is what keeps your brain interested. When you are asked to stretch just a little bit more, you grow just a little bit more. Anybody here like working out and exercising and stuff like that? You gotta lift heavier weights to get stronger. If you've plateaued, you gotta work a little bit harder to lose a little extra weight. It doesn't just happen on accident, it happens by intention. It happens by intention, so that stretch is really cool. Autonomy is all about you being in control. And I will be the first to admit that in my job role as a cybersecurity professional, there's a lot of things that are out of my control. And probably in IT in general, there's some things that are out of our control. Outages, unless it's an unplanned outage, outages generally aren't scheduled. Hackers don't book time on my calendar and say, I'm going to break into the ODOT website on Friday at 2, please be ready. It doesn't happen that way. So when those things happen, so that's some uncertainty, but that's also some autonomy. I don't have control over that, and I like to have a sense of control. From a leadership perspective, can you think of a leadership style or a management style that infringes on your autonomy?
Micromanaging.
Thank you. Micromanaging is a great example of how your autonomy can get stepped on. I think Charles does a good job of not micromanaging things. He said it in his opening remarks today. He wants to point people in a particular direction and have them do that work. When you are given a playing field and you know what your options are, or when you give others a playing field and explain the options to them and then say, go create, feels good to you because you're helping people develop and you're helping them use their brain power. And it feels good to the person you send it to because they have choices and a greater sense of autonomy. When you micromanage somebody, you get the absolute opposite effect. So who wants to share some autonomy threats that you've experienced in your time? Keep it civil. What are some other ideas of where your autonomy is threatened? I might have already mentioned one, other than micromanaging.
Well, even if, like, in the past, I've been involved in like picking different kind of solutions and things like that. And you know, you go through the process and you pick out a good solution, and you might even demo another solution that doesn't work very well, and you say, we shouldn't buy that one. But your manager says, oh, let's buy that one because it's cheaper.
Yeah, because you already bought it, right? Or it's already been purchased. Belinda, what about you?
Years ago, I had a supervisor who really didn't understand what we do in IT, and so she was constantly asking me to run these ridiculous reports, which is taking away time from us doing what we needed to be doing.
Right.
So I felt like I was out of control, and then I was almost afraid to make decisions because, you know, I thought that she would change it or not be happy with the decision I made. So kind of like getting her knees cut.
Yeah. Yeah, and guys and gals, sorry, everyone, team, do not marginalize or minimize the impact of these SCARF rewards and threats. They're absolutely valid and they're absolutely discernible on a functional MRI. There are areas of your brain that will light up when you feel like you are not in control. It's usually in the pain center in your brain. And sometimes those scarf threats aren't significant. It's not going to cripple you, but it's going to linger in your brain because of that Velcro. Who has my pan? You pick that pan up, young lady, and you rip that Velcro off. Make that sound. There you go. Those things stick to your brain. And again, if we're thinking about communicate, connect, collaborate, and if as IT folks or people related to IT, if we understand that optimized systems, PCs and servers, on an optimized network function really, really well, we might borrow that concept and think about this system and each of us as other systems, right? And I would like to say complex system interacting with other complex systems. Doesn't it make sense to understand how that interaction can be optimized so that we can collaborate? Remember the away state and the toward state. In the toward state, you collaborate with people. In the toward state, you have full access to your ability to solve problems. And in the toward state, you have the access to creativity and all sorts of wonderful things that you need to do awesome work at ODOT. The opposite is true when you're in the away state. So let me talk about, again, how we can manage the autonomy. If you want to get people's buy-in, give them say-in. This is super simple. There may be times, and this is slightly underhanded, there may be times where you have already made up your mind, supervisors, what direction you're going to go in, but give people an idea of the 3 things, their potential options. Send out that email, wait a week if you can, and say, appreciate the feedback, we're going to go with option B. It's amazing what happens when people have at least been given the possibility to chime in on those options. You've given them a say-in. Now, that might be synthetic say-in. You're not even considering what it is, and I'm not necessarily an advocate of that. I would like to see, as people design solutions, that we wholeheartedly get lots of ideas and come up with some options. But there may be times when you know what the best solution is, but you point out some options to the team, and then ultimately you select the one that you had in mind anyway. Isn't that right, Nathan?
See.
Okay. Because I've done that to these guys before. Let me explain why. I know a lot about our SIM. I've integrated the FortiSIM solution in so many locations. And I want these guys to be involved in identifying how we might architect it. So I've given them options, but I already know what the best one is. And giving them the opportunity to look at them and understand what some of the options are gives them some buy-in. And I think they may have figured it out early on. But we talked about planning your visit. Don't just show up. So I have been guilty, and I'm going to look around the room. I have just shown up at people's cubes before. So I haven't done my. Why do I need to go visit Ann? Well, I like Ann, so maybe I just want to go visit her. Well, I like all of you, by the way. Don't feel left out. But plan your visit. Know your why. Understanding that somebody is likely already engaged in something important. And when you just show up, you are potentially infringing upon their sense of autonomy. You don't know what is currently going on in their world at 9:30 in the morning, let alone 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You may be the last straw. You have no idea how many people have done drive-ups on them through the day, or how many times they're linked. Let me tell you, I have walked past people's computers and seen 6 or 7 link conversations. I'm wondering, do those wires ever get crossed? Do you ever have to say, oops, I didn't mean to send that to you? I've done that before. But you don't know if you were that person that's going to kind of be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So plan your visit. The time that I will use link, and this is why I say use Skype link when you must, is some of you may have received link messages from me where I'll say, may I call you or may I visit you quickly to discuss a very specific topic. Now that's vital. I might have done that to you yesterday, right? I looked at you and I had this memory of this. that does a couple things. It helps Belinda quickly get certainty over why I'm asking her something, and then she can quickly calculate and exercise some autonomy of whether or not I can come and see her. She's in District 7, so I can't come and see her. I needed to call her. But she gets autonomy and she gets certainty, and then she doesn't have to wonder what it is I need to ask her about. Does that make sense? It's a simple tweak. It's a really simple tweak, and it's super, super respectful. The other thing that I would recommend, and this is for any complex conversation that you're having with somebody, get out of link and use your voice. Voice communications for solving complex problems is huge. Not to mention that if I am, let me see if I can type on this keyboard, or pretend I'm typing on this keyboard without messing anything up. So this is me typing. Jurassic Park, remember Jurassic Park, that girl who's hacking? I'm hacking. I learned everything I needed to know about hacking from Jurassic Park. I'm in!
Swordfish.
Woo! Swordfish too. But Jurassic Park is a much cleaner movie. Thank you very much. Anyway, moving on. So here I am, I'm typing on my keyboard and I look at the screen and I see hi. But my brain knows there's more coming because as I move over, I can see that they're typing. All right, so let's name the scarf triggers here. All right, status isn't one of them, but certainty is. I'm wondering what's going on, what's up. Autonomy is another one, and we'll get to fairness, but sometimes just encroaching on somebody in that way is a little unfair. It's a little unfair. I don't want anybody to feel bad about that because technology has given us the ability to be exceptionally lazy in the way we communicate. Got a question? Draft an email. Got a question? Get up and go talk to somebody. Got a question? Link somebody. If we want to become exceptional communicators and we want to reduce the rework and we want to leverage our brains to make great decisions and take advantage of our focus, think differently about the way you communicate. I'm not saying don't communicate. I'm saying communicate differently. So here I am, just typing on the keyboard, and it would have been much easier if you'd have called me. Because chances are I might answer the phone, maybe, or I'll definitely listen to your voicemail. Belinda left me a voice message. And it worked great. It wasn't urgent. Didn't need a Skype communication. Now, how many of you here think that I sound really, really picky? I'm not being picky. I have, because of concussions, because of skull fractures, because of OCD, and having to learn how to learn differently, I've spent a lot of time researching the way the brain works. I took an exceptional 16-week class from the Neuro Leadership Institute. Right? It was about two things, two disciplines: brain-based conversations, so how to have conversations with the brain in mind, and then how to do brain-based coaching, so how to coach people to think differently so they can achieve really cool stuff. It's not this ethereal philosophy. This is pure modern neuroscience that's been collected, or the neuroscience has been established by people way smarter than me and made available in ways that's easily digested. So I'm bringing that expertise to this conversation so that we can communicate, connect, and collaborate. Relatedness. I really hope none of us have ever been in a meeting like that. How does that, you look at that picture, how does it make you feel? Who wants to say? How does that make you feel? Look at that picture and like, oh my gosh.
Dumb.
That, dumb. Jerry. Dumb. It's like, man.
Why am I here?
Yeah. Wait a second, why are you here? Why are you here?
That's a good question.
Awesome, outstanding. Learned something, Robbie. I have been in meetings like this. I've been this person, and that was my business partner. I started the company and hired him, and he's losing his junk on me. That feels like garbage. And did you see how animated I got? That happened 11 years ago, and I can tell you about it in exceptional detail. I can probably tell you what I had for lunch that day, and that I didn't have dinner because I was sick to my stomach.
You had Velcro.
That's right. Do it. There you go. This is going to stick. Sorry, it was really bad. So got to keep it interesting, guys. In group, out group. That's what relatedness is about. Relatedness is your brain's mechanism of saying, are you a friend or are you a foe? That's what relatedness means. Are you a friend? Are you a foe? Your brain, by default, is always asking, will this help me? Will this hinder me? Will this help me be successful? Will this not help me be successful? Will that snake bite me? Is that bee going to sting me? Your brain's always making those calculations. If somebody contradicts you in a meeting or says something that makes you feel bad, your brain will recategorize that person as a jerk. And when you see that person, you won't have good feelings about them. Now, you can correct that. We can all be big boys and girls and correct that over time. But you have to be aware in this scarf space that relatedness in your brain is the question, friend or foe. And your brain is always looking to categorize things. It wants to put things in boxes because the brain is inherently lazy and it wants to be super, super efficient. So it's labeling. If you guys went to any of the diversity and bias training and things along those lines, the human brain is a bias engine. There are so many biases. There's like, I think it's 80 biases now. There's so many biases. But your brain, the conscious and unconscious bias, we should have all learned about that. But your brain wants to label things because there's so much information coming at us. And as information warriors, right, we don't live in a jungle anymore. We don't have a lion that's going to jump out at us. But we do have someone who might show up at our human house. We might have a link message, 7 or 8 of them. We might have an inbox that's filled with 1,000 messages. And those things can trigger us. And your brain is labeling those things as good, bad, ugly, and everything in between. And that's what relatedness is about. So who wants to share something about relatedness? I don't want to know who did that to whoever. I covered that myself. Have you ever met somebody and they just instantly rub you the wrong way? And please don't say, yeah, in that intentional IT professional conversation. But have you ever met somebody that just rubs you the wrong way for some reason? You just can't put your finger on it? Maybe it's the way they talked, maybe it was the way they dressed, maybe it was something they said. Maybe they said something unintentional to you. It was an accident. But your brain puts them in a bucket. And it's part of your brain's bias system. That's relatedness. And there's things that we can do to endear ourselves to others through our communications and through other mechanisms to make sure we're not scarf triggering people. So what are they? Body language. If you are in a meeting with somebody and you are not liking what you're hearing, this is sure to send that message. Robbie's got his arms full with it. Because Robbie is comfortable. This also signifies that you're comfortable. Something I know from neuroscience is that the way Robbie's sitting right now is actually called power pose, and Robbie feels confident right now. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay, so there's lots of other cool brain hacks I can teach you. So Robbie's body language doesn't tell me he's not interested. All right? But if you're in a meeting, I'm going to use my little tiny chair here, and you hear something you don't like, and you're like engaged like this, and then you go, stink face? I've seen it get this ugly. Okay? We have these neurons in our brains. We have billions of neurons. We have these special neurons in our brains called mirror neurons. Who's heard of mirror neurons before? Not mirror like is in the Soviet spacecraft thing. Mirror. Mirror. Okay.
Only because you told me about it.
Oh, God. Mirror neurons. If I was absolutely flooding this presentation and was stammering and couldn't remember what I wanted to say, you would likely feel embarrassed. That is your mirror neurons. You feel horrible. You feel bad for me. You might feel bad for me anyway, but those are your mirror neurons. If I suddenly started to cry, you might tear up. If I started to laugh hysterically, you might also laugh too, because I would probably look like a fool. But the mirror neurons in our bodies are designed to resonate with what's going on around us. Closed body language signals to your mirror neurons that something's up. And this can start to break down the relatedness that you want to have with somebody. Stay positive in your body language when a meeting is starting to go south. You may not know, like I knew about Robbie's, it's called power pose, but I knew that he felt confident. You don't need to know that. Your brain already knows what negative body language looks like. And as you key into it, it will change the way you start to think about that meeting. You do not want to be hijacked by the very primal part of your brain that just wants to go, oh my gosh, this is a horrible meeting and he's being mean. You don't want to be hijacked by that. Because that's going to create rework. It's going to create more trouble. And then there's nothing but bad decisions that come out of that. I love face-to-face communication. I love seeing all these faces in here. I know almost everybody in this room, so I'm so happy to see all of you here. And I'm glad you came to this meeting or to this talk. But I love face-to-face communication. I try not to just go and show up at somebody's cue. And what I really try to do, as it relates to communications and meetings and things along those lines, is I try to make sure, again, just recapping what I've talked about, know what that why is, know what your ask is, know what it is that you're trying to say to somebody, and be really, really aware of the status, the certainty, the autonomy, the relatedness, and we'll get to fairness here in a minute. But just remember, you might be stepping on somebody's day. Be super, super cognizant of that. When you go to see them, be super gracious. Say hello. Say, hey, how was your weekend? Say, it's good to see you. But be genuine about it. Don't go, hey, man, it's really nice to see you. So I got this problem. That's superficial. Really superficial. Right? Shanice, how's it going? Hey, did you have a good weekend? Awesome, so good to see you. Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question about this invoice we just got? I'll only take 5 minutes of your time, I promise. Oh, see, she's learning. She's totally shut me down. But no, she's got the right idea, but I placed it a little bit better. Chances are she may say, you know, give me 10 minutes, because she likes me. We got a good rapport. But I'm also not going to take advantage of that, because that's not fair. And we're going to get to fairness next. All right? WTF, you are all using it the wrong way. I'm going to teach you something really, really cool. WTF means what the fudge? Oh, fudge. You guys remember that from Christmas Story? Okay. WTF is usually what you say when somebody cuts you off. Somebody shows up and they are the final straw. You're frustrated. I'm so busy right now. I can't handle this. I'm so overwhelmed. You have those thoughts sometimes when someone just shows up? Don't lie. It's true. Lying's unfair. What you should be asking, what I want you to ask is, comes now, what's that feeling? Everybody say, what's that feeling?
What's that feeling?
It doesn't feel as good as the other word. Guarantee it. Why, what's that feeling? Neuroscience says that if you can identify or label, it's called labeling, if you can label the emotion that you're feeling, then you're using your prefrontal cortex. And you're warming up your PFC and cooling off your deep limbic system. If you can remember, what's that feeling? When you start to erupt, what's that feeling? What's that feeling? You can create that disconnect from happening where you suddenly start to make emotional decisions and you freak out and your amygdala, your uh-oh center goes, holy crap, the sky is falling, oh my gosh, tier 1, the network's down, the internet's broken. No, it isn't. Your computer's off. Relax. Relax. I don't like to do that to people because it's really embarrassing. What's that feeling? All together now. What's that feeling? Not to mention the F word is very unprofessional, so please don't use it in the workplace. All right, fairness, last one. Who has kids? All right, other than daddy, because I'm going to claim this, what's the first word or sentence that you hear your kids say? Well, all my kids said daddy first, so I'm claiming that. That's not fair. Did you teach your kids to say that word? Who taught their kids to say that's not fair? Nobody teaches their children to say that's not fair. And as we get older, it never goes away. We just don't say it unless you're a millennial. Boom! Okay. Fairness is ingrained in all of us, and fairness is all about equal exchange. If I know that at any moment Greg will drop what he's doing and help me, it's unfair of me to take advantage of that. If I know that I can go over and just talk to Shanice at any moment because she's a nice gal and we have a good relationship and she wants to help, it's unfair for me to do that. Likewise, if I go over and politely interrupt someone and kind of take advantage of that, if they come to me later in the day and I'm honked off about it, that's not fair, is it? So think about this. When you think about fairness and people coming up to you and communicating with you, and when you think about SCARF overall and how you might be triggered, remember, if someone's coming to see you about something, it's because they respect you as an expert. They respect you as someone who knows the answer. What happens if you drive them away? Is there another expert as good as you? Are they going to go and ask the right person? What happens if they get bad information and they try to fix it themselves? Rework, think, oh my gosh, I love you guys. Whose fault is that? That's your fault. So in the spirit of fairness and being mindful of SCARF, treat people with fairness when it comes to your communication. It sounds like everybody else's presentations are wrapping up early. We have 15 minutes, so wake up, everybody.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
I need a bio break. I need a bio break. I covered all of this, so I'm gonna skip by that. But I do want to ask you guys, other than me keeping you here for 15 more minutes, which I won't do, any other ideas of fairness in SCARF? Status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. How do you feel like perhaps you may have been treated unfairly? Think about communications, meetings. We can talk a lot about meetings. Yes?
I've got one for you. If you are going to say, someone's come to your cube, and you're going to say, oh, can you give me 10 minutes? Can I get back to you tomorrow? Just watch your delivery, because delivery is everything.
Yeah.
If you deliver in a nasty way, in a short way, I'm busy now.
Yep.
You know that, what you've done is you've cut off the possibility that that person's ever going to come back to you, because they're going to go, oh, she was a real B last time. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And that's instant.
That's a good point.
So it's all, to me, it's all about the work.
Yeah. And that's gonna affect relatedness too, right? Because the brain is a categorizing system.
Yep.
And you might get shifted from a friendly sort of collaborative person to someone who's grumpy and grouchy, and I don't want to go talk to that person. Okay.
I got one for you.
Yeah. Robbie, hit it.
So in the highly visible work environment we have, if somebody, you just scarfed me, thanks.
That was to her.
Oh, you broke my concentration. If you always tell somebody, hey, give me 10 minutes, give me 15 minutes, but they can visually see you not doing that to somebody else, they'll perceive it as an unfair exchange.
That's absolutely right. If you walk up and you know that people are just shooting the breeze and they're not busy, all right, if you know you're not busy, don't tell someone you're busy. That's not honest. But, you know, sometimes, you know, maybe it's your lunch break. I mean, come on, be real. We're professionals, so I think we should have a good read on what's professional behavior or not professional behavior. But through the lens of SCARF, that may have the perception of being unfair. And when you're emotional, perception is reality. It's the way you perceive the world. That's the lens through which you look at the world. So I told you that I was going to break this down through 5 things, and I'm not going to ask you to remember what they were, but I will tell you that it's a SCARF. Who's got my SCARF? Got my SCARF. So we talked about SCARF, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. This is a really ugly SCARF, so I just want to give that scarf to somebody else, I don't want it. But you can remember scarf, it's even almost green. It's olive. Status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So we talked about how to communicate better and how to be cognizant of how to keep people in the toward state. PFC is activated, we're ready to collaborate, we're engaged, we're communicating, we're connecting, etc. The limbic system gets fired up, we're emotional, there's a disconnect. Everybody heard the expression, emotion suspends reason? You guys heard of that? It's a big deal, emotion suspends reason. Keep that in mind. Your emotion will suspend reason. So find ways to re-engage that prefrontal cortex. We talked about scarf, we talked about Velcro and Teflon, we talked about WTF, what's that feeling? And finally, the iceberg. I asked people in my group if they knew what the iceberg meant, because I drew all these words on the board. It was really funny. Someone actually said that SCARF, once they learned that it was an acronym, was some crazy a-hole ruined my focus. Is what they thought SCARF meant. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
What's everyone going to remember?
Icebergs, somebody said, humans are cold. Well, no, humans aren't cold. We may seem cold sometimes. But so here's what's cool about an iceberg. What makes the iceberg move? Is it the wind or the currents? It's the currents. What makes us move, people? What we're feeling drives what we're thinking. And what we're thinking drives our behavior and our results. So if you lay status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness over your feeling and your thinking, if you use SCARF as a filter through which you evaluate the emails that you're sending. I'm drafting an email. Am I infringing on status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness? I'm getting up to go talk to Greg. Am I infringing on autonomy, relatedness, fairness, things along those lines? I'm scheduling a meeting without any details, no agenda. Am I scarfing people potentially? Keep that in mind. When you're getting ready to communicate, where do you stand? Are you in an away state or are you in a toward state? If you take anything away from this, remember those 5 keywords. Remember scarf, remember Velcro, right? Remember Teflon, remember WTF, and then remember the iceberg. Okay, but just toward state and away state, toward state and away state. So that's all I have for you, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Mr. Levins, are we supposed to be done by noon or, okay?
Yeah, everybody's piling out now. Look at food trucks.
Oh my gosh, all right.
So we're all late already, so it doesn't matter. Right, carry on.
So I was told we had an hour and 15 minutes, so at any rate, any questions required? I don't want to keep anybody longer than they need to.
I have a question.
Yeah, right.
It's mostly related about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So with all this thinking with the brain and everything and all the different parts, what's the best way, when's the best time to work on a difficult or really tough task?
When your mind is the freshest and in the morning. There's 3 types of levels of thinking, level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is super simple. Level 3, 2, and 3, planning, envisioning, strategic things along those lines. If you're doing big thinking, you're probably doing strategic work. And the best time to do that is when you're fresh. For most people, that's in the morning. So the big takeaway there, prioritize prioritizing. If you get your priorities wrong, you're going to be working on the wrong thing. Prioritizing is a big thinking sort of item. So prioritize early. Do that early in the morning. Any other question?
Well, just one more question on that. Because this would be kind of harder for you, because you're in Q. I'm in an office. How do I get away with closing my door and no one coming in and focusing? If I'm really working on something, I need extreme focus. How do I get away with saying, hey, I need my door closed. I can't be interrupted because I'm doing this task?
You might come up with a charter with your team that talks about a number of things. So when do we use link, when do we email, when do we walk up, and what does it mean when the door is closed? And is there a note that you can put on your door? In my office at home, I have written on a Post-it note, deep work in progress. And when that note is up, everybody knows, don't go into the room. But that note is not up, then people can walk in. So you say, it's kind of like how computers communicate. We have protocols. So establish a protocol, and you support that protocol through a charter. One more question. Robin.
Simon, is there a common set of mistakes that people make when they're in the away state?
really good question. So I'm going to ask you guys to look something up. They're called the top 10 thinking errors. And you need to challenge yourself with this when you read this list. Print it out and keep it in your cube. One of the top thinking errors is black or white thinking, or all or nothing. And this is really common when you're in that away state. You do not see the options. You adopt this thinking of, I know this is the problem and there's no way it could be anything else. That is all or nothing thinking. The other one is catastrophizing, and as well as crystal balling. Catastrophizing shows up like this. That'll be a nightmare. There's no way we can do that. When you hear somebody using the term, that'll be a nightmare, there's no way we can do that, chances are they're in an away state, and you need to get them back up to a higher level and engage their brain in a different way. Get them thinking about why. Guys, you've been awesome. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What's funny about that particular book, they don't even call them chapters, it's like part 1, part 2, part 3. But anyway, no, I heard that.
That worked out fine.
Good.
You thought I forgot that, didn't you?
No, that they should have said that they went to Charles, telling people my real name. Hi,
Jumping jacks.
Darling.
Darling.
Mwah.
Oh, you jumping jacks again?
Oh my gosh, 10 reps of jumping jacks, that's weak sauce.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's like 90 seconds, there's burpees, there's push-ups, there's all sorts of things in there.
90 seconds of burpees, that'll get you.
What, like a boot camp or something?
You know what, I got them at